Well, most bluntly and directly, because if you want to be a member of a religious order, that's the way within God's providence in the church religious orders are structured. Uh, Plain and simple, that's a very pedestrian answer in some ways. But as far as a deeper, if you want to call it, a more profound kind of an answer, poverty partly, again, partly utilitarianly, poverty because if it's a group of people living and working together, it's going to be impossible for them to do so if one has privileges that the other doesn't have simply because of what he happens to have. Oh, indeed, so people, and some people in the society do, they travel more, they do more of this, they do more of that, they have more of this or that because of their work. That's no problem. But unless there were at least a community of goods in general, you couldn't have the society. But on the level of imitation of our Lord, I personally, quite frankly, do not believe. I don't think you can get it from the gospel. Maybe you can get it from an intuition, but from the Gospels itself, I don't think you get the idea, or that you can prove that Jesus was a very poor man. I hardly think he was rolling in wealth, to say the least. He certainly was, in some senses, the words are hard to get, an itinerant, wandering prophet, and he didn't live on purple and fine linen, to say the least. But that he was in abject poverty, no, and that's not what we practice either. We practice a dependency, which is also part of what you mean by poverty, a dependency on the goodness of God to provide the things that are necessary for our lives. Secondly, chastity. Well, you couldn't possibly have a religious order living in common without, I should say, you couldn't have it if you had a group of married people living as a religious order is structured in the church today. And as far as obedience goes, some way or other, again, if you're going to have a group of people living in common, simply pedestrianly to begin with, you have to have somebody who makes some of the decisions. The way those decisions and the structure of that decision-making can be very different from one order to another or can change through the years. For example, in the Society of Jesus now, there is much, much more consultation than we ever had when I entered the society, and it is regarded not only as a good, but a necessary thing at the present time. It would never have been regarded that way 65 years or so ago. But then also obedience in the sense of Jesus. Jesus, plain and simple, was obedient to God the Father as he understood him and laid down his life for him. If finally you're going to be a religious and a member of the Society of Jesus out of imitation of Jesus, those three, poverty, chastity, and obedience, not as vows in his life, but as influences upon the way in which he lived and worked, aren't you going to try to imitate him, however poorly you do it? I'm Father John Padberg, and this is my calling.